Welcome to another Quebec and New England layout expansion update. This video will cover a rather dry subject, pun intended. It won't be of interest to everybody, but I had to do it. It was just the next thing on my list, and I'm always taking photos as I go along, so I figured somebody might get something out of it. So here we go. In a previous video, I explained how I created fine gravel to simulate roadways and parking lots using normal limestone screening that you buy at Home Depot. All that is necessary is to sift it twice, and you end up with a very fine gravel powder mix. As you may have seen on many earlier videos from my layout, the color, in my mind anyway, was perfect. A light to medium gray, simulating crushed stone. That was several years ago, so naturally I thought, well, why don't I just go out and buy another bag? What I didn't realize, I should have realized, that there are many kinds of limestone. There's quite a variety of colors and shades in the real world, and it's entirely possible that the supplier to the same company packaging the product could have changed quarries or source materials. And that's what happened. The new bag produced this very reddish color after sifting. The color on its own didn't bother me too much, except that when I applied it with a water glue mix, instead of lightening up as it dried, it stayed dark and red. Not what I was looking for. Plus, it was quite an abrupt transition from the areas that I had done already with what little I had left over from the original batch and this new batch. So I needed to find a solution. After several months of experimentation with different things, including grout, colored grout, I landed on express scale ballast, which is actually a finer size ballast than I was typically using from Woodland Scenics, even though it was their fine. This is finer than fine, which makes sense considering 3/4 inch crushed stone is typically smaller than the size of the stones in regular ballast. I was curious to see what it would look like after it was applied. So I experimented a little bit around the edge of this building you see here. And it seems to have maintained its bright gray color. On its own, it wasn't too bad, but when you see it next to some of the older crushed stone that I applied previously, it's still a little bit light. Once again, I did a little bit of experimentation and found that a good mix was 3 parts of the Scenic Express Gray to 1 part of the reddish limestone screenings. And here you see the result, very nicely blending in. One of the odd things I found with this mix, rather unexpected, it seems to be more hydrophobic than any of the other gravel mixes that I've used before. You see here that I sprayed the mix with my alcohol water mix, and it didn't want to penetrate. So I switched to a soapier mix using dish soap instead of alcohol to break the bonds between the gravel. I also switched to using an eyedropper for the water glue mix to be very deliberate and careful where I applied it. And here you see the results at the far end of the roadway near the power plant. And here's another comparison view. The near side road shoulder is the old gravel mix, and the far side shoulder is the new mix. I also took the opportunity while I was in this area to fill in that open field on this side of the water tower. I'll come back with some weeds later to liven it up a bit. The next area I tackled was the very narrow space between the tank car unloading track and the roadway, which didn't leave a lot of room for the shoulder between the road and the ballast. I used some cheap masking tape to cover the road just to make sure that I don't get shoulder gravel on the road and it's not sitting too high at the top of the road surface. Standard practice is to cover the tracks as well whenever you're spraying with, even with water, but especially with water and soap mix and later when applying the glue, you don't want to mess up the track and ballast. Here's a look at this area finished. Well, I say finished, by the way. We'll come back later with weeds along the concrete footing to the building and something to soften that stark difference between the color of the ballast and the color of the shoulder. And here just a couple more photos showing the work progressing beyond the building and heading towards the diamond. Here you see I've run the crushed stone right up to the wood planks at the crossing on either side. More on crossings later in the video. Once again, in these areas where there's a stark change in color, I will come back with some weeds or tall grasses to soften that visual impact of the light ballast to slightly darker gray. On the yard side of the diamond, you'll see I just extended the regular ballast up to the edge of the asphalt. It didn't make sense to introduce the crushed stone darker gray at that location. As I got closer to the intersection and warehouse driveway, I did a little bit more experimentation and found that if you added a light dusting of the granular material as it's drying, some of it takes and some of it doesn't, and you can rub it with your hand and you can lighten it up a little bit. Now this is a view of the last bit of roadway shoulder work on that side of the support yard. And you can see on the far right, I was able to place the staircase, the concrete staircase for the warehouse door right into the gravel, and it sits quite nicely. The next area I looked at was a little bit different in that it's just the asphalt crossing of all the yard tracks. I didn't want very wide shoulders. That doesn't make sense. I just want to hide the fact that there's an abrupt edge of asphalt sitting high up above the ballast. So I tried to carefully just fill in with a little bit of the grounding materials, fill in that area to give it a bit of a gentle slope. And speaking of wide shoulders, the main road leaving the yard certainly deserves them. And as you see here, I've put a fair amount of shoulder materials here, partly because the road sits higher as it's crossing the fully ballasted tracks and coming down slightly to lower elevation. But these areas will need to be extended to the right as I continue with the groundworks in support of warehouse number 2. The last bit of roadway shoulder work was a bit of a challenge. I hadn't thought about it before getting to this place, but I needed to figure out a way to um, have the glue set and have the ballast hold it, not the ballast, the shoulder hold its shape while the glue dried without falling off the edge of the layout onto the floor. To my surprise, the masking tape method actually worked pretty well. And you can see here as it's peeled back, the shoulders held their place. There's a little bit of crumbling, but that's to be expected. And here's the final look at it. This is the area that I used as a test case to figure out the 1:3 ratio of the materials to get the color that I wanted. You can also see the beginnings of tire tracks in the gravel where I was testing out ways to subtly show that it's a well-used road. This company service road runs the entire length of the yard, and I wanted to make sure it was consistent in width, so I took a 2-inch wide strip of masking tape and ran it along the entire length. marked it with a black marker, and they use that as a guide in applying the gravel. This is the vehicle that I use to make the um, tire tracks in the gravel. To get this right without mucking up the glue and gravel mix, you need to wait till just the right time to run the vehicle over it. Otherwise, the truck will pick up all of the gravel and it gets stuck in its wheels. You need to wait till it's halfway dry, so you can when you touch it, it doesn't come up on your fingers, but it's still not. It's still wet enough that you can depress the grooves into the gravel. Here you can see off to the right, depending on the angle you're looking at it and the amount of lighting you have, you can see the two tire tracks uh, along the entire length of the curve in the gravel. After I completed the long service road along the outside of the yard, I came back and filled in this short service road for the building. But because it's less of a railroad service road than a customer's service road, I lightened it up a bit by using a 4-to-1 gray to red mixture of the granular materials. I mentioned before that the lighting makes a huge difference in your perception of tire tracks in a roadway. And here you see um, another view, the same view of the building road and the service road of the tracks in front, but with only the basement hallway light on and no lights in the basement. So you're getting a really side angle view, and the shadows really make the tracks in the road stand out. Here's a close-up view of the same area. You can see that the access road and the tracks in the gravel extend the full length of the building and even out to the crossing and connecting back to the main road. So this is an end-to-end view of the entire service road. Um, Key thing to remember here that this is just the first step. On either side of the road, there will need to be a fair amount of grass, weeds, bushes, and some fencing of some kind to prevent cars from driving off the cliff. So more to come in scenery-wise in this area. Stay tuned on that. One of the tricks I use when I want to make sure that a tank or some freestanding structure um, is sitting in within a graveled area, you don't want it to look like it's sitting on top of the loose gravel. You want it to be nestled right into the gravel. I use a masking tape cut to the shape of the structure that I can peel off after the gravel has been installed. But you can't wait until the gravel mixture is completely dry, otherwise it'll crack and chip off. If you want to have the exact shape of the structure, you need to peel off the tape while it's still slightly wet. This way, when it's dry, you can install the tank or whatever you're placing into the gravel, and it looks like it's really snuggled in. I use the same 4-to-1 mixture to complete the remaining approaches on either side of the wood plank crossings, and then extended the area to include parking lots or general support areas around the crossings. One of the interesting little scenes that I created using this technique was this triangular area just in front of warehouse number 1, where boxcars that have just delivered a load of recycled paper would be pulled back to clear out the dunnage and any other leftover scraps onto a waiting truck so that the car could be respotted and reused in warehouse 2 to load out finished products. Some of the interesting things I found at the latest model railroading flea market include this Athearn Winchester and Western sand car. It's interesting for two reasons. One is I was looking to replace the Portec 3000 version of this car that Atlas had brought out a little while ago, which I thought was a Fubi until I found an actual photo of it after I had bought this one. Even more interesting was that I found an actual photo of this car, number 4001. So all good. Now I have two Winchester and Western Sandhopper cars. The new paper plant needs paper boxcars. And this CPAA car fit the bill perfectly from the Northeast. And it was one of the old branch line trains car. It's a kit, but fairly detailed. And I happen to have another sample of this car with a different road number, so great opportunity to add to the fleet. And you can never have too many Kaolin tank cars for the paper plant. I now have all three road numbers that Walters produced in this K&T paint scheme. As it was the earlier production version, however, I had to change out the wheel sets and couplers. I'm a firm believer in the measure twice, cut once philosophy, and I had originally intended this track to have a capacity of 4 tank cars. However, the measurement I used for the length of the tank car were these Walters cars, and I only now realize that these longer Athearn cars mess up my track length. So if I have 4 of these cars, the dry branch Kaolin type cars, I do have 4 of them. If they all show up at the same time, this track is not going to be long enough. So you can see where I have the bumper off to the right. That track is not long enough. I'm going to have to push that bumper almost up to the edge of the building so I can squeeze in 4 cars if and when 4 cars show up to be unloaded here. And now for some new vehicle acquisitions. This one is by far my favorite. It is, after all, the Quebec and New England Railroad. So this Vermont Lines, Transit Lines bus fits in perfectly here. Just can't say enough. It's a beautiful vehicle. Fits nicely for the time and locale of the layout. On the right side of this photo, we have Volvo station wagon from the 1980s. Perfect, perfect timing for my layout. Now, I don't know if this one is good for the 1980s, but it's a cute little car. I just love it. So I'm going to leave it here. An old Volkswagen Jetta. Perfect. Here's one that predates the 1980s, but if I weather it up real good, it might still be running. And finally, love me some Breckenridge tractors. These things are so beautifully detailed, and they fill in that sweet spot in the 1970s, 1980s for heavy-duty trucking operations. As always, thank you for watching. If you enjoy layout improvement videos, here are a few others that you may find interesting. If you're not already a subscriber, you can click on the logo on the top right-hand corner of your screen.